afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bringing Agriculture Home. And this, of course, is our free webinar series where we continue with our vision, which is to help grow minds, food, and businesses. I am your host, Kerwin Joseph, and on behalf of the entire Homegrown family, the entire Homegrown team, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And we have a real nice session for you today. We would be hearing from a budding agripreneur, and this, of course, will launch our entrepreneur spotlight aspect of bringing agriculture home. All right, so I hope all of you would have had a wonderful week so far. I hope everyone is doing their best to not only cope with, but to ensure that we come out of this situation better than we went in. All right, so without any further ado, I would like to invite our special guest today, Mr. Dundee Thomas. Let's see if Mr. Thomas is ready for us today. Excellent. Mr. Thomas.
Hi, Cohen. How is everything with you all?
All is well, man. And how things with you?
Can't complain at all. Can't complain.
All right, excellent. Well, I see folks are still joining in, so it is not too late to invite a friend, to invite a colleague, to invite a family member, someone who is interested in agriculture. All right, so Mr. Dundee,
yes, sir.
Before we get into the real meat of the program, I would like for you to just give us an introduction about, yourself, what you do, what was going on before you made that decision to get involved in agriculture.
Okay, sure. Well, Cohen, as you would have rightfully said, I am new to agriculture. Persons who know me in terms of my profession, most would know me as a lecturer. I have worked in education for the last 16 years. I lecture in the areas of business, finance, accounting, usually at the tertiary level. So I lecture these courses for MBA programs, both locally and for universities abroad. Prior to that, well, initially, my career started in actuarial science. So that's really where
just now. So for those of us who might be familiar with what actuary science is, give us a brief definition. And after that, you will tell us about the time you spent at NASA as well. Go ahead.
Well, actuarial science is really very much into numbers. Persons in that field usually work with the insurance companies. Those are the geniuses behind all of the policies and securities that the insurance companies offer. So we run the numbers, we do the math to ensure, using things like mortality rates and things like that, to ensure that the product makes sense for both the customer and the financial institution. But my time there was short-lived, to be honest. I left actuarial science and I got into accounting. So I worked as an auditor initially, and then in accounting for a couple of years. But I always knew that the corporate world was never where I would spend a lot of time. So I always knew I would eventually want to do my own thing, so to speak, be more in control of my time, And so after a couple of years, I left the corporate world, and well, you still need to pay the bills. So that's how I got into education, teaching part-time for the last 16 to 17 years. So that's what I would have been up to prior to these new ventures that we'll be discussing today.
All right. Well, I still want to touch on some of those things a little more because
yes,
Homegrown, we are very much about promoting entrepreneurship and promoting, business. I will say it publicly, I really have a sort of peeve with what seems to be the small business love affair that we have, right? Because I mean, for us, when we talk business, we don't put any qualifier on it, right? You are doing business, and in most cases, you would start small, but definitely the dream is big, right? Now, with respect to the numbers part of it, because I know probably many people could identify with this, I am one of those folks who did not have a liking for numbers, right? Because I'm trying to grow my mindset. I will not say that I don't like numbers, all right? But, I did maths with a kind of bad mind attitude in the sense that, look, I'm not doing it over. I have to pass this, and that's the end of that, right? How important are the numbers in the business setting, in the running of a business? Not only how important are the numbers, but how important is it to know the numbers? Because the numbers are there, right? But how important is it to know the numbers and to be keeping track of these things?
The numbers is what it's all about. I mean, if you are not involved in detailed record keeping for your business, you're not in business. You have a hobby. Your hobby may be making money for you, it may be costing you money, but there's no way to know unless you are keeping detailed records. And that's one of the challenges I have seen over the years in terms of businesses, because it's a very different skill set to the skill set of someone who starts a business. That entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurial spirit that we talk about, the persons who can bring the factors of production together to create something of value, that's a very different skill set to someone who can run the numbers and say, yes, this idea makes sense. It's going to cost us X on a monthly basis, and it's going to produce Y. And therefore, if we are able to access some capital at X%, it makes sense for us to go forward with this venture. That's a totally different skill set. And that's why persons sometimes find themselves in challenges when it comes to business. Terms that we tend to model together is businessman or business owner and financier. These are very different groups. The businessman is the person who is running the organization and dealing with the employees and the market and things like that. And the numbers person behind the scene, usually the financiers, are the persons who see the business as an investment. You see, to an investor, a business is no different to the way the average person would look at their credit union account or their shares in the unit trust. That financier is investing in the company because he or she expects a return. They are not interested in getting involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. It's a totally different skill set, if you follow what I'm saying. So
yeah,
the numbers really is important because that's the behind the scene. Because at the end of the day, the main objective of any corporation is to make money for the owners.
Okay, 2 points I want to touch on from what you said. One is when you said that to know if you are making money or losing money, right? Because I think it's fair to say a lot of people who have operations, right? Who doing some sort of business, especially where they may be hovering around the category of small business, may not actually know if they are making or losing money. And you also mentioned the business owner being responsible, and you use the word market. Now, this is bringing agriculture home. So when you use market in that context, you're talking about Shoguana's market, Tunapuna market, right? So just
the term market. Last question. And the term, when I say market, the market is wherever your buyers are, wherever your product is going to be sold or where your service is going to be offered. And in today's world, it need not be a physical location. So when I say your market, it's where you are going to sell your goods, the means you're going to sell your goods using, whether it be online, where are these persons located? And knowing your market means not just knowing where they are located, but the demographics of your customer base and the factors that would influence their decision to demand your product. So marketing on its whole is a study.
So let me use that example, right?
Yes.
So I am farmer Brown, right?
Yes.
And I have, 1 acre, and I plant it up, as we would say, right?
Yeah.
Now, I am very good at planting up the land, right? And I just want to get it sold.
Right.
So I might go Shoguana's market, Tunapuna market, right? Port of Spain market.
Yes.
I may try to sell, wholesale. In my position, have I clearly identified who my market is with respect to the definition that you just gave? Or am I just focusing much more on the growing aspect, the production aspect, and not so much on what happens after that?
I would say the latter. And the issue in that, what I picked up from that scenario you just painted there, is that the person would have grown their crops. And in agriculture, what I've seen, and issues that I've seen cropping up over and over again, is persons not being aware of their cost of production. I mean, in my industry, in the rabbit industry, it's quite common. You must know what it costs you to get that particular good to the market.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to know if you are in fact making a profit. Because very often, depending on the goods you are selling, unless you have some way of differentiating yourself, you are most likely going to be a price taker when you get to that Makoya market or Shoguana's market. If you were growing lettuce, you will be subject to the going price of lettuce. If it's peppers, the going price of peppers. And you, as the farmer, must know what it costs you to get that product to the market, so that you will know if you are making a profit or a loss. So again, it comes down to the numbers.
Right. What are we talking about? We're just talking about the fertilizer.
Everything.
What about time? What about all the days that I spend planting up the land, gas, transport, lunch?
Okay. Well, I'm a rabbit farmer. So let's look at the cost of production of producing rabbits. If you ask the average rabbit farmer, they're going to say, okay, it's the feed, the breeding stock that you would have started with. Someone trying to start, say, a rabbitry, or any venture, as a matter of fact. But you raised a very important point. Time. Your labor, and there must be a cost attached to that. If you are spending 3 hours per day in your garden, you need to assign a cost to that, and that must be part of your total cost of production. You see, when you approach it this way.
For myself.
What's that?
But I say, but it's my land, and I planting up my land for myself, and you know,
Yeah.
Junior might help me every once in a while.
And that is true. But understand that the time you spend planting the land is time that could have been used doing something else. And who is to say that the time you are putting into the farm is earning you less, not earning you less than the time had you decided to put it somewhere else? So unless you have these numbers, you can't say you're really running a business. It's your land and Junior might help you now and then. That sounds very much like a hobby. That's not a business. And this is the way we need to approach agriculture on the whole. This is what I think has been keeping back agriculture. In the University of the West Indies, it's agricultural science. This is a science, and we need to treat it with the respect that it deserves.
Okay, folks, I don't know if, you know, some of y'all might have just had lunch before this session started, but you realize we went very deep very quickly. So let me dial it back a bit. And in front of all these witnesses here, Mr. Thomas, sir, I believe we definitely need to have more discussions on these matters in future sessions, right? So let me just come back to your story and give us that, bring us up to speed now with the transition from that world into agriculture. What was the catalyst driving that decision?
Okay. Now, being someone from a heavy mathematical and business background, I, of course, look at the world, I look at the markets, I look at the trends, and it was clear to me that agriculture is where we are going to see significant growth in the short to medium term.
Okay, before you move on, I want to hear a little bit why you believe that, because agriculture, we know the state our agriculture sector has been for not just years, but decades, right? So what makes you feel that there is going to be that upward trend in the near future?
No, in the past, we have had buy local campaigns and things like that, but we are quickly approaching a point where we are not going to have a choice. Our foreign exchange situation is best described as dire. Our food import bill of that $3 billion US that we spend on importing food is not sustainable given our current economic conditions. We are going to have to give up the apples and the grapes and start looking more towards the pomegranates and the mangoes. We cannot continue importing food the way we have been doing. So there's going to be an increase in demand. Not only because of that, but also from a health perspective as well. Look at what's happening globally in terms of this pandemic. One of the main areas that has been disrupted by COVID-19 is shipping. Global shipping is basically in chaos. Ask farmers who depend on foreign inputs for their production just how unreliable and how unstable that international supply has been in the last month, in the months since COVID. It was always shaky at best, because you not only were you depending on the availability of it, but the availability of foreign exchange. So we are going to have to make a shift. I mean, this is something that is mentioned in each and every budget, regardless of the party in power. But we are quickly approaching a point where we are going to have to pay a bit more than just lip service to this.
Okay. So how did you now actually get into the agriculture field?
Now, in terms of the rabbit industry, where I currently operate, I always had pet rabbits. So I was familiar with what it took to raise rabbits from a pet perspective.
Okay.
And I remember I was in this supermarket one day, it was in Arima, and I saw rabbit meat. And it's not something that you tend to see on the shelves of the supermarkets very often. And I saw the price of it. It was being sold at $60 a pound.
Not 1.6.
60 TT dollars per pound.
Okay.
Now I found that to be quite high. And what was even more surprising is that when I went back to the supermarket a couple days later, it was all sold out. All sold out. I spoke to the owner and he told me he just can't stock the shelves.
So just now, so $60 a pound flying off the shelf.
Yes. And I asked, well, why not? Why at that price, I would think persons would be able to supply. And, he didn't go into too much detail, but he said challenges with the industry, the regularity of supply and things like that. And that's where I started doing my research. Researching the industry, researching your market, researching what it takes to, what's the cost of production. And the research was quite challenging actually, because the fact is the average rabbit farmer can't tell you what it costs to produce a full-grown rabbit. They have an idea in terms of feed and stuff, but to break it down to the product level. And you see, a product with a high price encourages a certain level of laziness.
Okay.
Because if you know it's being sold at 60, you don't really have to pay close attention to your cost. More than likely at that price, you're able to cover your cost. Now that we are seeing more and more persons enter in the industry and increase levels of competition, and the price now of rabbit meat is say $40 to $50 a pound, you are starting to see two things. One, persons becoming much more cost conscious. And two, you're seeing a lot of persons leaving the industry. A lot of persons leaving the industry.
Wow, okay.
So I would have done my research, and it's something I enjoy doing because I believe a big part of anything that you decide to do in life, it must be something that you enjoy and you really feel attached to. So I enjoy animals and rearing animals and agriculture and stuff. It was always something close to my heart. So I took it from there and I decided I would stop being a rabbit pet owner and get into the rabbit industry. I sourced a couple breeders and took it from there, grew the business as the rabbits multiplied. So that's basically how I ended up in this industry. I guess I was fortunate because of my background. From the get-go, I approached it as a business.
Right.
So in terms of cost, detailed record keepings, things like that, I have my numbers are in order, very much in order.
Yeah. Well, last year, for those of you that might be new to the Homegrown family, we would have done a lot of webinars that focus on animal production. And people still seem to be not as interested in pursuing the animals, right? When we think agriculture, for most people, they still think about just the produce. But what do you feel is the potential for animal production?
The sky is the limit. I mean, when you look, we have so many things going for us here in this country in terms of our geographical location, which impacts the weather. Our geographical location in terms of proximity to markets. we have no reason to be importing the amount of food that we do, and by extension, the amount of meat that we do. Because the other part of it is that the local produce, whether it be animals or the local livestock, local fruits and vegetables, have a much higher nutritional content than the stuff that we import. So even if you are looking at it strictly from a health perspective, that's the way to go.
Right. So walk us through your journey now with respect to the rabbit production. And let's see, it is, yeah, we just about up on the half an hour mark. And then we would look at vermiculture, right? And for someone other than Mr. Dundee, if you know what vermiculture is, just type it in the chat, right? Any thoughts you have on vermiculture, type it in the chat. Let's see how many people know or don't know about vermiculture. So take us through the rabbit farmer experience.
Excuse Cohen, the chat is disabled.
Chat is disabled?
Yeah.
I didn't even know chat could be disabled. Okay. All right. Okay, is it still disabled?
No, it's enabled now.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Yeah, first time I had a disabled chat on Zoom. Thanks for that, Risha. Okay, Mr. Dundee.
Yes, well, in terms of take you through, what was it again? Sorry, I lost the question you were asking.
Yeah, no, we just want to hear more about your journey now as a rabbit farmer. How has that been? What have been some of the challenges, some of the highlights?
Okay, now there will always be challenges, but I always say, if you are not trying to invent the wheel, learn from those that have gone before. So I would have spoken extensively with experienced rabbit farmers. So I came into the industry piggybacking, so to speak, on the experiences of others. And this is something I know you promote it a lot with homegrown and things like that. There is, in business, lessons can be costly. Lessons can be very expensive. So when you are able to be part of a network, so to speak, where you can learn from the experiences of others and avoid some of these costly mistakes, I always say go for it. I mean, that's part of the reason that I went the route that I did in getting into hydroponics. You know, there are those that have done it before, done it successfully, know what they are talking about. So, you know, you go where the knowledge is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that webinar that you're speaking about, and this is, and again, another part of agriculture on the whole that I don't see a lot of, and it's continuous education. I would have been a pretty versed, quite competent rabbit farmer when I saw that ad from Homegrown. And in fact, it's that ad that first introduced me to you and the company. That's what caught my attention, a webinar on rabbit production.
Right.
And that's why I would have signed up for that webinar, because you could always learn something more. There's always a more efficient way, new techniques. Regardless of the field you are in, continuous education should be standard.
Yeah.
So that's how I would have been a participant actually in that webinar that you all did. But in terms of me and how I would have approached it, I would have sent you a couple pics. So yeah, you can take a look at the first one, Rabbitry 1, which would give you an idea of
All right.
The
So
setup that I use.
so just now, let me see if I can share my screen. And just now, let me shift this. All right. Okay.
It will be
all right.
number 2 there.
Right. So you just okay. So here's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just tell us what we are looking at on screen, and we'll just walk through the images.
Okay. Right. So in terms of breed, that's the first thing about being in the rabbit industry. There are many different breeds of rabbits, and you have to decide, again, coming back to some of the things we discussed before, your market. Now, I focus on the meat market, the rabbit meat market, which is very different from the pet market. And I know the whole idea of consuming rabbit meat is still pretty new to a lot of persons. We suffer a lot in this country from what we, us rabbit farmers, like to call the Bugs Bunny syndrome. You know, how could you eat this cute little bunny? We can eat it because it's one of the leanest sources of protein that you can find. It is the healthiest meat, basically. It has less fat than chicken, lower, of course, it tends to get lower use of chemicals and growth hormones, things like that. It's very high in all of the B vitamins, your B3, your B12s. So it's one of the healthiest meat. In fact, it's one of the top recommended meats by the Heart Association for persons that are having cardiac issues.
Okay.
So it is a very healthy meat. So I focus on the meat market. So what you're seeing here would have been 2 of the rabbits from my rabbitry, one on a scale, because of course it's all about production and weight and getting to weight by a particular time. The other pic you have there, where you get a chance to see them in the housing that I use. Right. I use all wire cages. It's much more sanitary. We use an appropriate mesh at the bottom of the cage that would facilitate the droppings falling through. So the rabbits are extremely clean. Okay. So sanitation is very important when it comes to the operations of your rabbitry.
Yeah. So they're not rolling around in their own poop.
No. Because again, I'm in the meat market, I focus on particular breeds that have been developed over the years for things like fast growths and higher meat to bone ratios. So the breeds that I focus on would be what is known as the New Zealand White and the Californian. These are 2 of the main meat breeds of rabbits. So with those breeds and ideal growing conditions, you are looking at a full-grown rabbit anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks. And by full-grown, we mean 5 to 6 pounds.
Well, this also brings us back to the point you made that agriculture is a science.
Yes.
And I think traditionally we have treated it with this type of attitude. Well, boy, if you can't take book, you go in the garden, right? As opposed to fully respecting and understanding all that goes into agriculture and you know, the benefits that we enjoy a lot from our foreign counterparts that we import from.
Yes.
All right, so let's see, what are we looking at here now?
Well, this is just another one of the cages. This is a doe with her kits. So this particular breed, the white breed, this is a New Zealand White. So she's there relaxing with her kits. The typical doe would give birth to anywhere from 6 to 12 kits, of course, through selective breeding as time goes by, your rabbitry should be improving in terms of production and efficiency. So right now I get on average 8 to 12 kits per doe. They are with their mom for the first 5 weeks of their life. And I wean at 5 weeks. And by wean, I mean I separate the kits from the mom and they are moved to their own housing to continue the growth process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have, so what?
Right, so the remaining picks you have there, because we have been looking at it from one perspective, and
Yes.
in my attempt to do away with the Bugs Bunny syndrome, I decided to throw in a couple pics of rabbit meat, some cooked and some in its processed form. So you're seeing a dish there with some barbecue rabbit with some baked potatoes in the background. Yeah.
And all of this, I must say, sir, looks very appetizing.
Yes. And the thing of rabbit meat, it's very similar to chicken. It's an all-white meat. So it's very similar to chicken in terms of its consistency and to some extent even its taste. But of course, it's much healthier.
Okay. So let's see. What's this? Did we know? Why are we going back? Right.
Right. So here you have some fried rabbit, which is a staple in my household every weekend. And when it's movie night, we tend to do, fried rabbit. Yeah.
Okay. So you see, folks, something else to add to your menu, to your options list, right?
Oh, this is just a clip of a couple of the grouse eating forage. So their diet consists of local forage and what is known as rabbit pellets. So it's a mix of forage and pellets. There you see them partaking in some local forage.
All right, so I'm going to stop share for the moment. Let me get a time check. All right, so we have looked a bit at the rabbit production. For those of you who may be interested, the recordings for those trainings that we did in 2020 are available. You could always get in contact with us if you would really like to learn more. And we do encourage it because, there are things that we need, but we may not necessarily want because we simply don't know. And this is one of the things we have tried to do at Homegrown, is to show people the amount of different opportunities that exist. Because one thing we see happening a lot, just yesterday, I had a conversation with a young lady and we spoke about this, where the farmer, you grow lettuce, 1,000 other people growing lettuce. So you go to the market now, you had to sell your lettuce for $2 because, everybody just doing the same thing. We're not really doing market research. We're not looking at all the opportunities that exist to find the one that we may really be able to tap into, right? So while everybody may want to do broilers and compete with the giants, we have supply in almost every other category, right? With respect to meats. And not only that, we can do a lot now to push more sustainable and healthy production because we can grow our own forage. We can turn our own forage into pellets, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, and we want people to think outside the box a bit. Now we just have about 15 minutes again, so let's hear about the vermiculture part of the story.
All right. We just put a pin there. I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat on rabbit. So before leaving Rabbitry, the rabbit business, I just want to touch on, I saw a question in the chat there from Risha How many rabbits do you rear at a time? Stock density per cage, size of cages, what's the weight? Okay, well, I would have a schedule. So I breed a particular amount of rabbits every 2 weeks, and that allows for my steady supply. In terms of cage density, there are standards that are advised in terms of ideal sizing of the cages for rabbits. You would not want your cages to be too packed, because that would lead to sanitation issues and can lead to health issues and higher mortality rates. So the size of the cage is important for your growth as well as for the doors. It's something that persons getting into rabbit production need to consider, because you can't say, okay, I have 2 cages, I have a male and a female, a buck and a doe, I'm going to get into rabbit rearing, because in 1 month's time, and that's the gestation period for rabbits, you know, after breeding, it takes 31 days and your kits are here. And in about 4 to 5 weeks after that, you're going to need additional cages. So it's something that needs to be planned properly. What's the size of the cages? My cages are 3 feet by 2 feet. So that's the size of the cages I use for my breeding doors. My bucks are 2.5 by 2 feet. What is the weight of a mature rabbit? 5 pounds is what's considered standard. I usually process my rabbits at whichever comes first, 5 pounds or 3 months. So at 12 weeks, I would process, and by that time, it's usually 5.5 to 6 pounds, and process, you end up with about 3.5 to 4 pounds of lean meat. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Now, rabbits, Cohen, obviously eat a lot. I feed my rabbits a lot of forage. I don't use any sort of chemicals or steroids or anything like that. And one of the things that my rabbit produce in no short supply is rabbit poop. Rabbit manure. I can basically fill a crocus bag of rabbit with rabbit manure daily. That's a lot of poop. Now, it's not a bad thing, because rabbit manure is one of the best fertilizers that you can use in the garden. So there's actually huge demand, not just for the rabbits and the rabbit meat, but also the rabbit waste. Because unlike the waste of your other livestock, rabbit manure is what's called a cold manure. Cold meaning it does not need to be composted before use. You can take it as you collect it from the rabbits and use it in the garden right away. It will not burn your plants. So rabbit manure is an excellent fertilizer. Rabbit urine is an excellent fertilizer and pesticide. So even what would be considered the waste from your production can actually help to offset some of your costs, because a bag of rabbit manure sells for anywhere from $30 to $50 a bag. So this is something that can offset some of your feed costs. Now, you spoke about, you know, everyone's doing the same thing and looking at your market. I was also a participant in another webinar Homegrown had put on vermicomposting and vermiculture, using worms to help speed up the creation of compost. And I looked at it, and what struck me is that I have an oversupply of a crucial input into an operation like this. So again,
Yes,
what did I do?
so,
Sure.
so what is a waste material in one operation is going to become input into a secondary operation.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what integrated farming is all about.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
Yeah. No, again, I ran the numbers. A 50-pound bag of rabbit manure retails for about $30. If I were to pass that rabbit manure through the digestive system of an earthworm or a composting worm, the 50 pounds of vermicompost that I get as a result of that will now be worth much more. So this brings us to the topic of value added. Yes, I can sell rabbit manure, and from time to time I do, but using that waste, so to speak, as an input into another business lowers your cost of production, basically eliminates the cost of production because it's a free input, and the end product is now much more valuable. Vermicompost, worm castings is just about the gold standard. They refer to it as black gold in agriculture. It's the gold standard when it comes to organic fertilizers. It retails for anywhere from $15 to $35 per pound. $15 to $35 per pound. So it made sense to me to take the waste I was getting from my rabbitry and use it as inputs into my wormery. And now in addition to rabbit meat, I sell vermicompost.
Okay, so folks, let me give you all a funny story. Now, for most of these sessions that we do, homegrown, we learn along with everybody else, right? So most times I have no real input or awareness myself, right? So I also go into these sessions with those fresh eyes. And I mean, last year, it's like almost every session we did, I was like, okay, I feel I want to add this to the operation because you see, there's so much. So we did try the vermiculture, and so I got our first bin from the guy that did the webinar for us, and I made a boo-boo initially, where I had them. I thought the temperature would have been good, but it right. So we had some migration, but then I changed the location, and that seemed to suit them better. And I remember, checking up on them, and for a few days, and yep, they're in there, they're moving around, things looking good. And then one day I went, and they were just absent, right? And I saw no anywhere. So I have come to the conclusion that they were in fact abducted by some alien species, right? So when I heard, what Mr. Dundee was doing and how far he has come with his operation, it was very, very encouraging, because there's a learning curve to everything, right? But we should not be afraid to try, because there are certain things at homegrown we believe every household could do. Composting is something every single household could do, whether you live in the city or whether you live in the country, suburbia, whatever. Every household can do composting. Every household can grow food. Whether you have a little apartment, we did a session last year on indoor crop production or whether you are outdoors, right? Every household can learn more about agriculture and food production and teach that to their families. I mean, 3 of these sessions we did last year, cheese making, or topics I should say, cheese making, sausage making, burger patty making. I like to call these tabletop businesses because you can literally start these things from your kitchen. There are people who have large chocolate companies that literally started making the chocolates from their kitchen. So there is so much more that we can do. And one of the reasons I like our speaker for today is even hearing his background. Because, you know, sometimes we might think, well, agriculture is not for the educated, right? For the folks that might have made their way to the offices. And that is, you know, the furthest thing from the truth, right? So homegrown, we have definitely tried some of the things ourselves. We've had better success in some areas, not so much in others. And I dare say, I believe our viewers look like they tend to do better than us, but that's okay, right? We doing our part, and you know, everyone work together to make it happen. So we just have about 5 minutes to go. We spoke about the rabbit production in length, and we definitely would like to introduce our homegrown family to some of these value-added products with respect to the rabbit and so forth, right? However, we understand the situation we are in right now. But once we see that we can move a little more freely again, y'all look out for a special invite to come and taste. And I will say no more on that, but just keep an open mind and get ready. All right, so just touch a little bit now on the hydroponics aspect and how, you know, what has that been like? The short story.
Well, again, in keeping with my current trend of my previous trend of integrated agriculture and integrated farming, I saw hydroponics as a natural progression. I didn't have the land space that would allow me to approach farming and agriculture from the traditional perspective. And one of the things I liked in doing my research about other options was that with hydroponics, it allows you to grow more using less. In terms of space, I did not need the acres and acres of agricultural land in order to get a fair amount of production. And then again, when I saw the presentation that was done by CASA it's like hydroponics on steroids. I was blown away when I saw it because they were using multiple layers and the plants were doing extremely well. And so it was a no-brainer for me, because as any of the waste or anything coming out of me growing is inputs into my rabbit business. I have rabbit manure and vermicompost that I can use to make compost teas and so forth, to even support my plants even more than they are already supported. And so it was just a natural progression for me, coming back full circle, you know, doing our best, which, and I honestly believe each of us has a role to play in trying to minimize our carbon footprint. So
right.
For me, it was a fit, a proper fit.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about your business a little bit with respect to the hydroponic system, because we know, apart from the automation, right, the technology that goes into the system itself, there are some other some other very unique aspects to how everything was designed. So tell us a little bit about the covering and what happens to the rain that would be falling over that system, especially as we approach this season here.
Okay, well, in backtrack a bit, in doing my research about the agricultural industry and the markets and so forth, I started seeing a common thread rather, and that was inconsistency. All of the major buyers, the supermarkets, the middlemen who buy in large volumes, they all had the same complaint: consistency. A farmer would come with excellent product this week, and in 2 weeks' time, he said, he comes complaining about pest or the weather and things like that. So inconsistency. So what I was attracted to was not just the fact that with the hydroponics as done by CASA, not only is it very space efficient, but it was a complete solution. A complete solution allowing you more control of the elements. So the system basically that I currently have is covered, and this is how CASA does their hydroponics. It's covered with a clear plastic, and that is to keep out the rainfall. Now, persons may be thinking, why would you want to keep out the rain? Rain makes everything green. We are keeping out the rain because the farmer, wants to control what goes into the system. And you see, if we are giving our plants the same amount of nutrients and 1 week there's no rain and the following week there's a lot, it leads to inconsistencies. You don't have control unless you are controlling the inputs. So that plastic covering that you see on the hydroponic systems sold by CASA, to me, that's a game changer. Because I can now go to my customers and say, I am going to bring this size and this quality lettuce to you each and every week. Rain could fall, rain could not fall. It's not going to affect my production. In addition to that, where my system is located is there's sometimes challenges for water. So the fact that we are using a plastic covering afforded us the opportunity to collect the rainwater and use that as part of our nutrient mix and nutrient solutions. So it was designed, and this again was not me. Prior to, I would say, 3 months ago, the only thing I knew about hydroponics was how to spell hydroponics. But now, again, piggybacking on the experiences of others, persons who have been doing this since I was still in accounting, persons like Mr. Das and all the whole CASA team.
Yeah.
I now have a system where, this morning I delivered 50 heads of lettuce to a retailer, and they were so impressed with the quality they want to buy every week.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Look at the last comment in the chat there, Mr. Dundee.
Correct. It is income security. And if nothing else, persons have seen, if nothing else, this pandemic has taught you, it should just be 2 lessons really. Take care of your health, and your income security may not be what you thought it was. Look at how many persons are unemployed now. Yeah. Look at how many persons are unable to provide for their families. And as someone in economics and looking at the numbers, we haven't even begun to feel the economic impact of this pandemic as yet. It is going to be bad. It is going to be bad. Our numbers in terms of infections and death might improve, but vaccination is not going to solve the economic issues that are headed towards Trinidad and Tobago. Secure your income with multiple streams. no better way to say it.
Advice from a business.
Yeah.
All right. So we are on the hour of 3 o'clock. So here's what I want to do. I want to give probably a couple of you the opportunity to unmute and you know, give us a comment or two. Give us your feedback on this session that we did. Mute, say hi, tell us how you felt about this entrepreneur spotlight.
Going with your permission, I'll also want to share, you know, some my Facebook information so that persons
Oh, definitely, and yes, make sure and type it
in
in
additional
well.
information, they can always follow me on Facebook.
Yeah.
So you have the Rabbitry there, and
share the links in the chat.
Yes,
right?
I'm doing this.
Excellent. All right, anyone want to unmute? Okay, cool.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon.
Sinclair O'Neill is the name. So you presented a lot of thought-provoking information. I like the fact that you're speaking from your experiences and not from the standpoint of somebody who might be a consultant peddling information or something of the sort. I am a bit aware of the potential of rabbit rearing. This is a revelation to me because I didn't realize that you could have added vermicompost to it, and you have also gone further with the hydroponics and rainwater collection as a system. I don't think people understand the power and the potential of that. So I look forward to your links, because I intend to keep in touch with you and to see how, you know, I could avail myself of the potential that exists. So thank you for the information you have provided, clear and straightforward. And thank you, Mr. Joseph, for the opportunity for you guys to expose others like myself to this. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. O'Neill. Ms. Giroud?
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Giro. Thank you so much. This has been fascinating, even though I came in kind of late. Mr. D&D.
Yes.
I am dabbling with it right now. Actually, in our backyard, we have like a combination of New Zealand and California. It was just a pet project.
Yes.
One of them, this is her third kit. And out of the 3 is only in this last kit that I had survivors. The others had passed away. And then I noticed another set that we have separate. They're already starting to fly. I didn't even realize that she was pregnant. Any advice on why it is the first 2 kits did not survive? I mean, I think I adhere to all the rule of thumbs that they write in the books. But again, you have hands-on and you started on a small scale from what I gathered. So any comments or suggestions?
Sure. Couple ideas. I think rabbits are extremely sensitive. And so something as simple as a sudden change in diet can cause a rabbit to pass. So in terms of the kits, there are so many illnesses and diseases that plague rabbits if they aren't managed properly. Once they're in a sanitary condition, most of the issues go away. So I would check the sanitation. You know, rabbits living or interacting with their waste is an absolute no-no. It leads to something known as coccidosis, which is very deadly to rabbits. So I would look there firstly in terms of sanitation and yeah. Her age, the health of the doe. Is the doe comfortable? Because rabbits are prey animals. A rabbit can easily scare itself to death, literally. So on nights like where there are fireworks and things like that, You have to be careful because if your rabbit is suddenly scared, it's going to pass. So those are just some of the things off the top of my mind that could be causing an issue, but you would really have to take a holistic approach and look at all aspects of it to see if you can pinpoint what has led to the demise of the kits.
And before I disappear, in an overall, how long did you go from starting rabbits to doing all these other things? What was your time span? 2 months, 5 years? Like I said, I came in late, so I don't know if all this went ahead.
From when I started my commercial rabbitry, well, so that would have been about 4 years ago.
Okay. So I still have hope.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And you have an excellent start because you have the breeds that I used for rabbit production, Californians and New Zealand whites.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Cohen.
No problem, Carolyn. Miss Carolyn is also very, very knowledgeable and interesting individual. She is involved in one of the other area of agriculture that we talk about so much, that we know has so much potential, and yet we have not seemed to be able to capitalize on it fully. All right, but I won't let the I won't spill the beans just yet. Okay, one more person before we close off for this evening. One more person. Yep. Risha.
Yes. Thank you, Cohen. Thank you. Is it Mr. Dundee? Is that
yes?
Correct? Okay. Thanks for your presentation. Certainly enlightening, and I'm one of the homegrown alum, should I say, Cohen?
Oh, yes. You are one of the graduates.
Yes, one of the graduates. So yes, I was in the session that Homegrown had last year with rabbits, and it did fascinate me. But what I would like to find out from you, Mr. Dundee, is the area, because of course, not everybody has access to agri-land. It may be in your backyard.
Yeah.
Whole issue with scent, and then of course, in preparing this meat, I mean, was it that you looked at YouTube videos on how to, cull and butcher or whatever the rabbits? That's what I'm interested in.
Okay. Well, it's an odd question. In terms of your location, in terms of an urban setting, I can't think of any other livestock that would be more suitable than rabbits. I mean, firstly, they are quiet. They don't make any noise. You'll hear the occasional thump when they stamp on their cages, but very quiet. From a scent perspective, as I said, the rabbit manure is a cold manure, so it does not smell. Now, if it's wet, it would smell. So it comes down to management of your rabbitry and how you arrange your cages. If you saw from the pictures, I have galvanized and guttering under my cages that collects all of the waste and sort of makes for easy cleanup. And so once that is done on a daily basis, there is really no smell coming from the rabbitry. So it's perfect for that urban environment. If you try to keep 4 chickens behind your house, I mean, not to be the scent, the noise, your neighbors will stop speaking to you. So they're perfect for that type of setting, that urban environment. Your other question in terms of the processing, now, I would have started with pets, and having pets, the pets breed like rabbits. So I was not new to rabbit meat or to the processing of rabbits. However, when I made the decision to go and do this at a commercial level, it would have required some investment in terms of equipment and facilities, the necessary registrations, your food badge, things like that, to make sure that you are preparing things in a manner that's suitable for the public. So I do the processing myself. It's just part of rearing animals. I know it's not for everyone. In fact, I know many rabbit farmers who rear rabbits by the hundreds and take their animals to others to process because they can't deal with that aspect of the business. So that's an option you have if you know the processing is something you don't want to do yourself. You know, these are things that can be outsourced, but like anything else, it is learned and it comes down. You develop a level of efficiency. I mean, now I can easily process the rabbit in about 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay. Excellent.
Hope that answers your questions, Risha.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right. Thanks for that, Risha and Carolyn and Mr. O'Neill. All right. So it is almost 3:15. Folks, thank you so much for attending. Mr. Dundee, thank you very much for sharing with us. Hopefully it won't be the last time. You are very knowledgeable, and we definitely would like to tap into that some more for the benefit of our homegrown family. We get a thumbs up, so I guess, yes, they want to hear more from you. This has been very, very interesting, as well as very encouraging, right? Another thumbs up. So in closing, let me just say to all of us, this is our responsibility. It is up to us. I don't know how many parents we have in the audience, but we have to decide what we want to leave for our children, for the generation that is coming up behind us. Are we going to just leave attitude of complaint, or are we going to be proactive and leave a better Trinidad and Tobago, a better region than we inherited, so that they can continue to build on the advances we would have made, right? You will keep hearing us say, let's get grow a collective us. It's not about trying to pass the buck or putting the blame on anybody else. You would also hear us say, at Homegrown, we don't compete. We do what? Collaborate. So let's work together. We don't have to feel like we are in this alone. No. All right? We can cooperate. We can work together. And all of us can succeed together as well. So thanks a lot. Have a wonderful evening. Have a great week, a blessed week. And look out for us, because moving forward, we would be bringing you some very pertinent information. Okay, someone is asking about the lettuce. Mr. Dundee, just look at that last question. Yeah.
Type in a response as we speak.
Right, okay.
Casa, if you could do a search for them on Facebook, that's who I would have gone to. And let me just say something in closing there on the hydroponics, Kerwin, because as someone who's, by now persons realize I research things extensively. Everyone and their uncle is selling hydroponic systems. They are all over. It's like the newest craze in Trinidad. But what attracted me to Casa was the support. Honestly, every day since I've built this system, Mr. Das, who is the person behind Casa, has been calling me. You're going to get fed up of him. It's only because he's on the call here, I won't say publicly that I'm a bit fed up of him. And by now he needs to just start to leave me alone. But that's what you want, because it's new. And I can say that now because at the start, though, I would have been very appreciative of those calls. So sometimes you see something and you say, you know, I can get that cheaper here. I might be less here. Very often you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. And what you're paying for is not just the material, it's the knowledge, it's the inner workings. It's the person visiting your location and being able to say, hey, you see this here, this can cause an issue. It's the person looking at where you want to put your system and say, you know, the sun moves in this direction. You are going to increase your production if you turn your system this way. Those are the little things that experience brings. And that's why I fully endorse CASA in terms of the hydroponic systems that they put together.
Excellent. And for those of you who would have been with Homegrown from day one, you know this is who we are. That's why we keep saying the Homegrown, because within our family we have a whole range of entrepreneurs, right? But all of us are working together because we see not only the need, but it is also part of who we are. So you would hear welcome to the CASA family, you would hear welcome to the Homegrown family. We also have on board with us the Cocoa family, right? Spill the beans a little bit. But you know, this is what it is about. It is our Trinidad and Tobago. We love our country. We love our islands. It is up to us. We don't have to do it alone. And we also don't have to create a type of fight down culture. We have done that for all these decades. It is not working. Let us take a new approach. I will officially, for the last time, I feel like I preached about 10 times already. I say this is the last thing, right? Thanks, everyone. This is officially the end of today's sessions. Blessings to all from the entire Homegrown team and the Homegrown family.